Hello, my name is Ahmad Rizki Arianto. Here I will provide information related to how to optimize 3D models, especially character design for mobile games using the LOD or level of detail technique. Okay, let's go to the first phase. What is LOD in the game? And why is LOD very important for optimization in mobile games? Level of detail LOD is an optimization technique used in 3D game development to improve graphics performance by reducing the complexity of the 3D model based on the distance of the player from the object. For example, here I have a 3D character design that I have given LOD group on the Unity software. Here if we look at the graph slider in this inspector, we can see that LOD 0 is a 3D character display with high detail. Then if we slide to the right, LOD1, it will display a 3D character that has been reduced in mesh or can be called a medium 3D model. And if we look at the rightmost one, the object will disappear. Okay, that's a brief explanation of what LOD is and why it's very influential for game optimization. In the second phase, we will provide a tutorial on how to implement 3D models, especially characters, using LOD with shortcuts that will make it easier to create. Before entering the second step, we must first understand 3D. 3D short for 3 dimensions refers to something that has length, width, and depth. In the context of computer graphics or the physical world, 3D means an object that can be seen and measured in 3 axes of space, namely x length, y width, and z depth, thus giving the impression of depth or volume. In conclusion, 3D allows the representation of objects in a more realistic and accurate form, both in computer graphics and the real world. The use of 3D technology has grown rapidly and plays an important role in various industries, including entertainment, education, medicine, architecture, and including games. For example, here I use 3D Blender editing software. In this project I use 3D character models as a test, and actually it can be more varied in making LOD. For example, here I use LOD up to stage 2 only. Okay, well, you can see on the display here the number of vertices displayed is different. LOD0 is high poly or HD display, and LOD1 medium poly, or the number of vertices is less than the high poly display. Okay, if this brief explanation is understood, let's continue into the process of creating and implementing 3D character designs using LOD. The first is usually as a 3D artist or 3D designer will create 3D models with a high level of detail. For example, in this display I have prepared 3D models for LOD0. Then when the 3D high poly object is deemed sufficient and has no more revisions, the next stage is to duplicate the 3D high poly object, and then we enter the mesh reduction stage, or in gamedev languages, topology. There are many explanations about topology or mesh reduction. So this time, because the 3D character we use as an example is a simple round character, mesh reduction will be easier. And here I have succeeded in reducing the mesh by a few percent from the original amount. Well, if you have successfully created 2 LODs, namely LOD0 and LOD1, then the next implementation uses a naming shortcut, which will later be automatically detected in game editing software such as Unity as LOD group. This shortcut is rarely found, so please pay attention to the important things in this naming. The first step, you have to give a name underscore LOD at the end of the 3D model's naming. Then what you need to pay attention to is the order of the LOD is 0. So if you have a lot of topology versions, what you have to do is just sort 0, 1, 2, 3. For example, here I use 2 LOD, which means the numbering order only stops at number 1. Now, if it's finished, try to pay attention to the naming again. Don't make any mistakes, and it must be the same except for the number sequence, so that when this 3D file is imported to the Unity game editing software, it will still be read as LOD. Now, if you have exported it as usual with the FBX file format, well, if it's successful, then the last step is to try to see and check again in the Unity software. First, you open the Unity software and you import the 3D models assets that you exported earlier. If you have entered it into the game scene, then you click the game object on the character. Then point the mouse at the inspector, and you can see the results. Yes, you have successfully given LOD to the 3D models you created. That's all the tutorials from me. hopefully can help game developers in creating 3D games without reducing the burden of performance on visual design. See you next time.